For over 5 decades, Dolly Parton has been America's sweetheart. The 78-year-old country music legend built her entire career on kindness, grace, and that famous Southern charm that could melt the hardest heart. She's the woman who smiles through everything, who never has a bad word to say about anyone, who turned the other cheek so many times it became part of her brand. But behind that carefully maintained image of sweetness and light, there were 5 people who tested even Dolly's legendary patience. 5 working relationships that went so wrong, they left scars that decades couldn't heal. One of them sued her for $3 million. Another publicly called her unprofessional and flaky. A third humiliated her on national radio in a way that nearly drove her to court. And through interviews, biographies, and rare moments of honest reflection, Dolly has revealed just how deeply some of these conflicts cut. Porter Wagoner. When Dolly Parton stepped onto the stage of the Porter Wagoner Show in 1967, she was a 21-year-old nobody from the Smoky Mountains with big dreams and bigger hair. Porter Wagoner was already a giant in country music. His syndicated television show reached millions of viewers every week, and his flashy rhinestone suits were as famous as his voice. When he chose Dolly to replace the beloved Norma Jean as his singing partner, it should have been the beginning of a beautiful friendship. The audience didn't see it that way at first. According to accounts from crew members who were there, fans booed Dolly during her early performances. Angry letters poured into the studio. But Porter stood by her, and Dolly kept her composure. Their harmonies were magical, their chemistry undeniable. Together they produced more than a dozen top 10 hits throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s. On camera they looked like the perfect team, but behind those smiles, cracks were starting to show. Porter didn't just want to sing with Dolly, he wanted to control her career. He managed her appearances, chose the songs they recorded, and made most of the key business decisions. For a woman as independent and ambitious as Dolly Parton, that control became suffocating. Dolly later admitted in interviews with Rolling Stone that Porter had a hard time seeing her as his equal. In the beginning, he had offered her a platform and mentorship, but as time went on, that same platform began to feel like a cage. By 1973, the tension had become impossible to ignore. Dolly was writing some of the best songs of her career, including Jolene and I Will Always Love You. But these weren't duets, they were solo pieces that came from her heart. In one interview, Dolly revealed the painful truth about those final years. She said, "When I was trying to leave the show, I told Porter I'd stay 5 years. It had been 5, then 6, then 7. He just had such a hard time with it because it was going to mess up his show." In 1974, Dolly finally left the Porter Wagoner Show. To the public it seemed like a friendly parting, but behind closed doors, the story was far from over. 5 years after she left, Porter came back with lawyers. In 1979, he filed a lawsuit against Dolly for $3 million. He claimed she had broken their contract and owed him for management fees, show expenses, and a share of her post-show income. For Dolly, the betrayal cut deep. Porter had been more than a business partner. He had been a mentor and an important part of her early career. According to sources close to the situation, she was emotionally devastated. The dispute turned messy, with press coverage and rumors spreading through Nashville. True to her nature, Dolly refused to fight dirty. She quietly settled the case out of court. In later interviews, she said she never wanted to battle him. She just wanted to be free. The lawsuit wasn't just about money. It ran much deeper than that. It was about control, ego, and the difficulty of watching someone you helped become bigger than you. After the settlement, Dolly and Porter went their separate ways. For years, there was tension and silence between them. But as time went on, things began to change. By the late 1980s, after years of distance, Dolly and Porter started to reconnect. The anger had cooled, and both of them seemed ready to acknowledge what they had meant to each other. Then in 2002, Dolly did something that surprised everyone in Nashville. She personally inducted Porter Wagoner into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Standing on stage in front of the industry's elite, she spoke about how much he had meant to her, even through the hardest times. When Porter was hospitalized in 2007 with lung cancer, Dolly went to visit him. Just a few weeks later, he passed away at the age of 80. Dolly was heartbroken. She held a private tribute concert at Dollywood, not for publicity or praise, but for the man who had helped launch her dreams, even if he once tried to hold them back. That chapter with Porter Wagoner remains one of the most emotional and defining moments of Dolly's career. But if that story revealed the complexity of professional partnerships, the next conflict showed something different. What happens when creative visions clash beyond repair? Linda Ronstadt. In the mid-1970s, Three of the biggest female voices in music dreamed of creating something special together. Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris were all stars in their own right. They admired each other deeply and talked about recording an album together that would blend their voices into something magical. But conflicting schedules and record label politics kept getting in the way. It wasn't until 1987 that their long-awaited album, Trio, was finally released. The record was an instant success. It went platinum, hit the top of the country charts, and won a Grammy. But in the studio, things were far from harmonious. According to sources close to the production, the three women had very different working styles. Dolly, known for her quick and spontaneous approach, liked to record songs in just 1 or 2 takes. Linda Ronstadt, on the other hand, was a perfectionist. She could spend hours fine-tuning every note. Emmylou Harris often found herself playing peacemaker between the two. Dolly later admitted that working with Linda felt like dealing with a studio diva who wanted to spend all day perfecting the smallest details. So in 1994, they decided to try again. Trio 2 was supposed to recapture that magic, but record label disputes and scheduling issues delayed its release for years. When Trio 2 finally came out in 1999, the music was there, but the friendship wasn't. The damage had already been done. Linda Ronstadt didn't hold back when she spoke about Dolly Parton in later interviews. She openly admitted that working with Dolly was frustrating, claiming that Dolly often canceled plans or showed up late to recording sessions. According to Linda, Dolly was never on time and came across as flaky, which made the collaboration difficult. Linda felt that Dolly didn't fully respect the effort and dedication it took to complete the project. She believed Dolly was more focused on her solo career than on the group's work. Eventually, Linda made it clear she had no plans to work with Dolly again. She even said that Dolly's lack of professionalism had ruined what was supposed to be a fun, creative experience. As the years went by, time softened some of the hard feelings, but there was always a touch of awkwardness between them. The trio legacy still stands as one of the most iconic collaborations in country music. But behind those beautiful harmonies, Linda's words lingered. Yet if Linda Ronstadt's criticism stung, the next conflict would cut even deeper. Elvis Presley.
It's no fault of Elvis, he loved the song.
When you hear the name Elvis Presley, you think of the king of rock and roll. And then there's Dolly Parton, the queen of country. Both legends in their own right, they nearly came together once. But what could have been a historic collaboration ended in tension over one unforgettable song. It all started with Dolly's timeless ballad, I Will Always Love You. Written in 1973, the song was deeply personal to her. It was inspired by her decision to leave Porter Wagoner and step out on her own. When the song was released, it quickly became a hit. What she didn't know was that Elvis Presley's team had taken notice. The king himself wanted to record the song. By the mid-1970s, Elvis was still a dominant force in music. Naturally, Dolly was thrilled that Elvis wanted to cover her song. But then came the catch. Elvis's notorious manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a reputation for demanding huge portions of publishing rights for any song Elvis recorded. When Colonel Tom Parker demanded 50% of the publishing rights, Dolly refused to give in. Dolly stood her ground. She told Parker, "This is the most important copyright in my entire publishing company, and I can't do that." The decision wasn't easy. Dolly later admitted in interviews that she was deeply hurt by the situation. She admired Elvis tremendously, but the deal felt unfair. According to Dolly, Elvis was very disappointed by her refusal. He genuinely loved I Will Always Love You, and had been eager to record it. Dolly said she felt terrible for turning him down, but she knew that compromising once would open the door for others to take advantage later. She believed Elvis never fully forgave her for saying no, and it broke her heart. In the end, though, Dolly's decision proved to be the right one. Years later, Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You became one of the biggest songs in history, earning Dolly millions in royalties. Despite the tension with Elvis, Dolly has said she never regretted standing her ground. Turning down the king of rock and roll wasn't easy, but it was a moment that defined her strength and integrity. But if disappointing Elvis Presley was difficult, the next conflict would be downright humiliating. Howard Stern. Dolly Parton has always been known for her kindness and grace, but in 2008, someone managed to push her to the limit. Howard Stern, famous for his bold and controversial style, had built his career on saying things most people wouldn't dare. In 2008, Dolly Parton became the target of one of his most shocking stunts. In a disturbing radio segment, Stern's team took clips from Dolly's audiobook My Life and Other Unfinished Business and edited them together to create a fake interview. They spliced her real voice into phrases that made it sound like Dolly was saying vulgar, racist, and deeply inappropriate things. The edited audio mocked fellow artists and even made crude jokes about her own body. Dolly, who almost never responds to controversy, was heartbroken and furious. She released a rare public statement saying, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life. I cannot believe what Howard Stern has done to me." She even hinted at possible legal action, saying, if there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this. The reaction was immediate. Fans were outraged, but Howard Stern didn't back down. He didn't apologize or show remorse. Instead, he laughed it off, claiming it was just a joke. After that incident, Dolly and Stern went their separate ways for years. Then, something totally unexpected happened. In 2023, Dolly shocked fans by appearing on The Howard Stern Show for the very first time. 15 years had passed since the scandal. She was promoting her new rock album, Rockstar. To everyone's surprise, Stern was respectful. He praised her and held back his usual crude humor. But others noticed the lingering tension. It felt clear that Dolly was there for business, not forgiveness. She was professional and gracious, but there was a distance that suggested the wound hadn't fully healed. Once again, Dolly showed the world what grace looks like, and yet the final conflict on this list cuts in a different way. Through every feud, criticism, and controversy, Dolly Parton has stayed the same, humble, resilient, and full of grace. She's faced everything from million-dollar lawsuits to public insults, yet she always emerges stronger. The conflicts she's had weren't the result of a difficult personality. They came from standing her ground and refusing to be controlled or disrespected. In recent interviews, Dolly has shown no bitterness about these difficult relationships. Her reconciliation with Porter Wagoner before his death showed her capacity for forgiveness. Her ability to appear on Howard Stern's show years after his cruel stunt demonstrated her strength. Today, at 78 years old, Dolly Parton remains one of the most beloved figures in American entertainment. And yet, as much as she's revealed over the years, there's a sense that there might be more to the story.